All right, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, is it? Yeah. All right. Well, we hope everyone's safe. Welcome, friends, to Daily Power Parsha. This is our daily look at the Power Parsha. No, at the Parsha in a powerful way. That's the goal. How are the canopies? Not bad, right? Yeah? Good. They for sure make a difference, right? Yeah. Sitting in the sun is crazy. Who would want to sit in the... Oh, wait a second. I'm okay. I can always lean a little bit. I think that would be ideal, but it's good. I can work on my color. All right, so welcome. Let's begin to explore the fourth reading of our double portion Tazria-Metzora. Okay, so this is tremendous because there's so much to talk about. In the fourth reading of any double portion, it's kind of like the bridge. You probably have heard me say this dozens of times. The fourth reading is the bridge between the first of the two and the second of the two portions, where it's basically the last little bit from the first portion and the first bit from the second of the two portions. So let's pick up the conversation. Leviticus Chapter 13, verse 55. But what were we talking about that we're picking up? I was going to say that sounds electric. Anyway, so what are we picking up? The conversation about sarat that's not on the body, but on the clothing. That was where we left off last time, yesterday. So we talked about a garment or even, wool or linen garment. We spoke about the wool and linen, even just unwoven garment, just the actual threads, the material themselves. We spoke about the idea of leather, a leather garment or leather not in a garment. All of these could have sarat on it. Sure. Mark, this is a good question. This is a key question. Mark is asking, so would sarat be on the garment because somehow the garment needs a certain tikkun, a certain repair, or is it the person and it's being manifest in the garment? According to the commentaries, the answer is B, based on the person. In fact, and I'll share this now because I think this ties right into your question. Our sages tell us that there's actually a progression. If somebody does something, too much gossiping, too much lushing, so what happens is it first appears actually on the walls of the house. And then if the person doesn't get the message from that, it goes on the clothing. And if a person still doesn't get the message, then it goes on the person's body. But that's the progression. Shelter, clothing, person. That would be the order of progression of the sarat. Okay. So that was the issue that we left off with. Well, what do you do if you find a discoloration, whether it's green or red, right? Happy holidays from your friends here at Sarat. But what do you do if you have these types of discolorations on the clothing? So we talked about quarantining it for 7 days. And then you wash it, double check, see if it comes out. If it comes out, then it's nothing. But if it spreads, then it's a problem. So this is where we pick it up. Leviticus Chapter 13, verse 55. I printed out these copies with Rashi. Not that we're going to do all the Rashis, but just if we need it, we got it. So here we go. So this is after the 7 days and after it's washed. So then inside, the Kohen shall look at it after the lesion has been washed. And behold, this is the scenario. Every time it says, and behold, it means it's really like an if. If this is what happens. And behold, the lesion has not changed in appearance, and the lesion has not spread, so it is unclean. So basically what happens is you found the stain or the potential sarat lesion on the garments. You gave it to the Kohen. The Kohen's like, yeah, that could be. The Kohen quarantines it. After the quarantine, look at it again. Oh, still a problem. Still doesn't look right. Still doesn't look so kosher. Let's wash it. Quarantine it for another 7 days. And now at this point, 14 days later, and after one wash, you look at it again. If it has not changed in appearance, this verse said, in other words, it's not getting dimmer or smaller, then it's unclean. It's sarat. Then you got a problem. You shall burn it in fire. Wow. You essentially destroy the garment. It is a penetrating lesion on the worn or new article. It is, in other words, it's officially tzarat, it's officially a problem, and you officially have to get rid of it. And the only way to get rid of it is by burning it. Okay, let's turn the page. There's a lot of Rashis there, but we're going to skip it. Let's turn the page. Verse 56. But if the Kohen looks at it after it has been washed, and behold, the lesion has become dimmer. In other words, if it actually does look dimmer than it did before, then he shall tear it out of the garment, out of the leather, or out of the warp or woof threads. So it didn't disappear completely. It's still there, but it hasn't spread, and it looks a little bit dimmer. So what you do is you actually cut out that area where the lesion remains, and that you destroy in fire, and the rest you wait. Verse 57. And if it appears again on the garment after you cut it out, right? You cut out the area, but another one appears on the garment after you cut it out. So if it appears again on the garment, the warp or woof threads or any leather article, then it is a recurrent growth of the lesion. In other words, so again, there's different scenarios. If you quarantined it, washed it, quarantined it, and it's still there in full force, you burn the whole thing. If you've quarantined it, washed it, quarantined it, and it's become dimmer, but hasn't disappeared, then you cut out the area of the lesion. I know you're thinking it's going to be awkward. I'm going to have a shirt with like a hole in it. Okay, but imagine like another type of garment or another thing where like, okay, you trim the bottom of it perhaps, whatever. So you cut it out, and then the rest is theoretically kosher unless it reappears, in which this thing is shot. We got to totally get rid of it. So then the Torah says, verse 57, you shall burn it in fire, the article upon which the lesion is found. Once, if it's a recurring growth, you got to get rid of it. Verse 58. And as Rashi specifies in verse 57, it means the entire garment at this point. You try to only get rid of that part that had the discoloration, but now when it came back, that's it, done. Got to get rid of the whole thing. Verse 58, but the garment, the warp or woof threads, or any leather article which is washed, and the lesion disappears from them. So again, it's 14 days later, and you've done this. You've noticed it, you brought it to the Kohen, quarantined for 7 days, you washed it, quarantined again for 7 days, and now at the end of these second 7 days, if it's gone, then it shall be immersed a second time in water, and it shall be clean. So this is the ruling. The ruling is 14 days later, if it's now disappeared, mazel tov. The garment can be worn, but it first has to be immersed a second time in water. And as Rashi says, this refers to a mikvah. Look at the last Rashi on that page 2 out of 8. It says vechubas means in this context immersion in a mikvah. So the first time after this first 7 days, you wash it in a washing machine or whatever. You washed it to kind of clean it and see if it would disappear. The second time, once it's disappeared, you don't launder it again for laundry. You actually dip it in a mikvah to cleanse it. And the Rebbe said, I'll get to the Rebbe in a second. Let's finish off the verse and finish out the first two Torah portions. Verse 59 on page 3. This is the law of a lesion of tzarat on a woolen or linen garment, warp or woof threads, or any leather article to render it clean or unclean. In other words, this is the protocol for dealing with tzarat on garment or garment-like items. Good. I want to share with you an insight that the Rebbe has on the washing of the garment. I keep on repeating myself, but I just want to make sure that the scenario is very, very clear. So a person found a discoloration on the garment, brings it to the Kohen. Kohen's like, that could be tzarat. It's got the right color. It's got the right to be tzarat. Quarantines it for 7 days, stays the same. you wash it, you launder it, you wait another 7 days. If it disappears, you're good. If it's dimmer, you cut out the thing and you burn that. If it's the same, you burn the whole thing. But if it disappears, as I said before, then you dip it into the mikveh and you're done. So the Rebbe says like this: the first time you laundered it, the second time you mikved it. The first time you were cleaning it physically, the second time you cleanse it spiritually. And this is the same pattern, the same process when it comes to human rehabilitation, personal rehabilitation. You know, none of us are perfect, so this applies to all of us, but present company excluded, of course, right? But human beings, we make mistakes. Step one is the washing machine. Step one is literally stopping the negative behavior. It means just like literally when it comes to washing a garment, it means taking out the stain. It means literally purging the negative behavior. So if a person is caught in a negative behavioral pattern of, you know, anger or jealousy or whatever the negative quality is, step one is washing machine. Purge, get rid of the behavior. But step two, which is still necessary, is the mikvah, which is a spiritual cleansing. It's not a physical cleansing, it's a spiritual cleansing. Step one is dropping the actual negative behavior. Step two is going deeper and calling upon a spiritual form of cleansing. What does that mean? It would mean aligning oneself with the source so that one does not come to make the same mistake. It's kind of like, let's talk about a human relationship for a moment. Let's say, I'm going to give like a maybe unrealistic, maybe softball example. It is what it is. This is just by way of example, not necessarily a real life thing. But it's, let's say a spouse forgets the other spouse's birthday. And let's say to that other spouse, that was a big deal. So there's two things that need to be done. Number one, do something for the birthday when you realized it. Clean up the mess. Number two, it's commit to getting closer, to deepening the relationship so that it won't come to a place where next time you're going to forget, right? Because the forgetting is not just forgetting. It's a sign of some sort of deeper thing of a lack of awareness or being too busy to pay attention or being a little bit disconnected. It's a sign of something deeper that's causing that manifestation. And I know I'm giving a simple example and maybe a non-realistic example, or maybe it is realistic. I don't know, but just an example so that we have a sense of what we're talking about here. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So then a literal mikvah, but also symbolic of a bit of a deeper connection. So you have, and thank you for sharing that. So you have, you know, situations that are surface that can be dealt with on the surface. But the point is, with the second immersion, as the Rebbe says, oftentimes the surface cleansing is only step one. There's a bit of a deeper action that needs to take place for the full cleansing to really happen, to really get back to a good place. Make sense? All right. Let's begin the second of the two portions, and we immediately begin in this reading, this fourth reading, with the second Torah portion. Oh, I should mention, the first of the two deals with the problem. The second of the two portions deals with the solution. So we dealt with how to examine and how to analyze and how to determine whether it's impure. But this second Torah portion that we start with, Leviticus Chapter 14, deals with, okay, so now that we know now that we know that there's been impurity, so how do we fix it? What do we do to solve the problem? Here we go. And the Lord spoke to Moses saying, to interrupt myself once again, which tells us it's not enough to know the problem. We also have to know the solution and embark on the solution. It's all about solving it, not just identifying it as a problem. So God spoke to Moses saying, verse number 2, this shall be the law of the person afflicted with tzaraat on the day of his cleansing. So in other words, after the quarantine, and after he or she is sent out of the camp to be in that space where those afflicted with tzara'at are, and after there's no longer any sign of the tzara'at on the person, so this is what should happen. The person is brought to the Kohen. The Kohen, verse 3, the Kohen shall go outside the camp. So actually, the Kohen makes a house visit or a quarantine visit. The Kohen, verse 2, it says the person is brought to the Kohen. Verse 3 says the Kohen goes to the person. So which one is it? The person goes to the Kohen. Sorry, the Kohen goes to the person. But as the Kohen approaches physically, the person approaches spiritually. The person is meant to make themselves vulnerable to the message of the Kohen and to the guidance of the Kohen. So the Kohen physically goes outside the camp, but the person goes to the Kohen with openness. And the Kohen shall look, and behold, the lesion of tzara'at is healed in the afflicted person. So a person picks up the red phone, calls the Kohen, says, I think I'm done. I think it's healed. Can you come out? Sure. The Kohen comes out. The person sees the Kohen, and indeed, it's healed. So here we go, verse 4. Here's the process. And the Kohen shall order, and the person to be cleansed shall take, here's what's in the order: 2 live clean birds, a cedar stick, a strip of crimson wool, and hyssop. So these are going to be the items that are needed, or the entities that are required for the purification ritual. 2 birds, a cedar stick, a strip of crimson wool, and hyssop. Hyssop is a very low growing herb. It's like I'm looking right here at these. I don't know what this is down here, but it will be something that grows low to the ground like that. How do I know that? Because Rashi says that that's why hyssop was chosen, because it grows low to the ground. That's how I know what it is. Not because I'm an expert in hyssop by any stretch of the imagination. So Rashi says each of these items is used very significantly. Let's look at Rashi verse 4. Live birds, that means no birds that have a fatal disease or injury, no damage or unhealthy birds. Clean birds. Why are birds required for this cleansing rite? I'm skipping a line or two. Because lesions of tzara'at come as a result of derogatory speech, which is done by chattering, by tweeting. Therefore, for his cleansing, the person is required to bring birds which twitter constantly with chirping sounds. So Rashi says, Rashi was on to this whole Twitter thing before it was a thing. So Rashi says, why tzara'at? Because there's too much chatter, too much gossiping. So you bring birds which tweet, which reminds us of the problem, not to do so much tweeting or twittering or chattering. Why a cedar stick? Because Rashi says, because lesions of tzara'at come because of haughtiness, symbolized by a tall cedar. So the cedar is a very tall tree. So the problem is arrogance, whether it's straight arrogance or arrogance that leads to gossiping about everyone else. Either way, arrogance was part of the problem. Next, why the crimson wool and hyssop? So Rashi says, what is the remedy that he may be healed of tzara'at? He must humble himself from his haughtiness, just as symbolized by the talat, the worm which infested the berries from which the crimson dye was extracted to color wool. Basically, the wool was dyed crimson through berries that were involved somehow with the worm, which reminds us to be small. Sounds like a stretch, but nonetheless, that's what Rashi says. Okay. And hyssop also grows low. I guess Rashi didn't mention. I'm sorry. Rashi says, and the lowly hyssop. The hyssop also grows low, and that's what reminds the person to be a little bit more humble and less arrogant. Okay, give me a second here. Let me extract a visitor creature from my table. All right, you can learn Torah from down here. Let's continue. Now, verse 5. So we have 2 birds, cedar, a stick of cedar wood, crimson wool, and the hyssop. Verse 5. The Kohen shall order, and one shall slaughter the one bird into an earthenware vessel over spring water. And as for the live bird, verse 6, he shall take it, and then the cedar stick, the strip of crimson wool, and the hyssop, and along with the live bird, he shall dip them into the blood of the slaughtered bird over the spring water. So essentially, one bird is slaughtered and its blood is collected into an earthenware vessel that has water in it, spring water, and the other bird is taken with the other items, dipped into the water, into that blood water, and eventually it's released, which we'll see in verse 7. He shall then sprinkle 7 times upon the person being cleansed from tzaraat, and he shall cleanse him from this mixture. He shall then send away the live bird into the open field. So basically, we have 2 birds, which both represent shatter. And one ends up being slaughtered, which represents the death that comes about through gossip, right? What did they say back in the day? Loose lips sink ships, right? So gossiping can literally kill a person's reputation, make someone embarrassed, which is like killing them, can literally lead to a person to a person's death. Either way, the idea here is that that gossiping is akin to a form of murder, which is why one bird's life is taken. That's a symbolism. And the second bird is released and freed to fly away. The idea that to remind us that our speech should only be used for uplifting experiences, not for unhealthy experiences. God used speech to create the world, and we should use speech to create and build, not to, God forbid, destroy. So one bird ends up with its life lost, and the other one is freed. And the idea here is to end the gossip and to begin using speech for what it was intended for. Probably, I believe so. Was there a Rashi on that? Let's see. Were the birds identical? I believe the birds were similar, yeah. Kosher bird, yeah. Has to be a kosher type of bird. It's a medrash. Good question. Midrash, yeah. Torah Kohanim is a midrash only on Vayikra, only on Leviticus. Torah Kohanim literally, so does Talmud. Torah and Rashi draws typically from Talmud and Midrash for his commentary. Torah Kohanim literally means the law of the priests. Torah means the Torah of Kohanim. So it's the Midrash that's on the priestly book, which is Leviticus. Okay. And where do we see that the bird should be kosher? Verse 4. It says clean birds. So clean means both kosher as well as healthy. Okay, let's do verse number 7. He shall then we did 7, verse number 8. The person being cleansed shall then immerse his garments, shave off all his hair, and immerse himself in water in the mikveh and become clean. After this, he may enter the camp, so he's no longer banished outside the camp, but he shall remain outside his tent for 7 days, which Rashi says basically teaches us that during the 7-day period, he's prohibited to have marital relations. That's what it means, kind of outside his tent, meaning no intimacy. And it shall be on the 7th day, verse number 9, that he shall shave off all his hair, again, I guess for the second time, page 5, that of his head, his beard, his eyebrows, indeed, all his hair, he shall shave off, which would make it awkward if you're like trying to grow a rabbinic beard. You end up at tzaraat. It's like, start again, sounds like. Indeed, all his hair he shall shave off. He shall then immerse his garments and immerse his flesh in water, thus becoming clean. So garments are immersed, goes to mikveh again, and thus he's become clean. This is, again, there's 2 rituals. One that happens on the day that the Kohen first ascertains him to be free of tzaraat. And then there's 7 days later, there's the second cleansing ritual. Let's continue, then I'm going to come back to some things that I want to talk about. Verse 10, on the 8th day, from when the Kohen first pronounced him to be tzaraat free, he shall take 2 unblemished male lambs, 1 unblemished ewe lamb in its first year, 3/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with olive oil as a meal offering, and 1 log of olive oil. It's an amount of olive oil. And the Kohen, okay, fine. So then all of these items should be taken as an offering for the 8th day, which is after the 7 days, free from tzara plus 1, then this is what's taken. Remind me, I want to keep on going because I don't want to stop here, but remind me about the spiritual meaning of cutting off the hair, shaving the hair. I'll talk about that in a moment. But let's continue. Verse 11, and the Kohen who is performing the cleansing on the 8th day shall place the person being cleansed together with these items, with these things, before the Lord at the entrance of the tent of meeting. 12, and the Kohen shall take one male lamb and bring it as a guilt offering, along with the log of oil, and wave them as a waving before the Lord, up, down, right, left, or front, back. Verse 13 on page 6, he shall slaughter the lamb in the place where one slaughters the sin offering and the burnt offering in a holy place. For regarding the Kohen's service, the guilt offering is like the sin offering. It is holy of holies. Essentially, if you recall, sin offering is for inadvertent sins. It's for the sin that was committed. Guilt offering is for the guilt of committing the sin when a person did it on purpose. So this Metzora, this person who's healing from Tzarat, has to bring the guilt offering, which is offered in the same place as the sin offering. Verse 14, the Kohen shall take some of the blood of the guilt offering for the gossip, and the Kohen shall place it above the cartilage of the right ear of the person being cleansed, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. So it's ear, right thumb, and right big toe. And there's meaning to this as well, because we should have listened to what God said and extended our hand in action and our foot also in action. Hand is doing, feet is walking. That we should be listening and doing and walking toward where we should be and not where we shouldn't be. In other words, not gossiping and not running to, like, you'll never guess what I heard about so-and-so, Yankel, right? Always ankle. To that, I refer you to the source. I don't know. Verse 50. Sorry. Right. Maybe it's more the proactive stuff, right? What we should be focused on. I like that. By the way, some of the inauguration offerings, I don't know if we missed it or I skipped it. There's also like the ear, the hand, the right ear, the right thumb, and the right toe. And there it's a bit of a different angle on it. As a leader, as a Kohen, as a leader, one should make sure to be attentive to listen to the needs of the people, extend the hand, and run to take care of what people need. So a similar way, I guess we could apply to the Metzora, to this person with Tzarat, that they need to be listening, doing, and running to the right place as opposed to the wrong places. Okay, here we go. Verse 15 on page 7. And the Kohen shall take some of the log of oil and pour it onto the Kohen's left palm. The Kohen shall then dip his right index finger into some of the oil that's in his left palm. Again, Sandrine, what you said before, I think is still accurate, very precise here, right? You pour the oil into the left palm, you dip the index finger of the right hand into that oil in the left palm, and then sprinkle some of the oil with his index finger 7 times before the Lord, sprinkled 7 times in the holy space. Which Rashi says, what does that mean before the Lord? Opposite, i.e. toward the direction of the Holy of Holies. So if you're standing where the offerings are brought, which is outside that building, the temple building, so then it's just toward the direction of where the Holy of Holies is inside. Let's continue verse 17. And some of the remainder of the oil that is in his left palm, the Kohen shall place in the cartilage of the right ear of the person being cleansed, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, on top of the blood of the guilt offering. Remember, there was blood put on all those 3 places. Now you're also placing some oil on top of that as well. And what is still left over from the oil that is in the Kohen's left palm, he shall place it upon the head of the person being cleansed, and the Kohen shall effect atonement for him before the Lord. The Kohen shall then perform the service of the sin offering and effect atonement for the person being cleansed of his uncleanliness. And after this, he shall slaughter the burnt offering, and the Kohen shall bring up the burnt offering and the meal offering to the altar. The Kohen shall thus effect atonement for him and he shall be completely clean. So again, to recap, person is at the end of, after all of previous protocol, let's say a person is officially diagnosed, you have tzarat. Outside of all three camps into a special area, and then he monitors himself until he notices that he's clean, that it's gone. When he notices it's gone, he calls the Kohen. The Kohen comes and takes a look, and then on day one, there's the bird, cedar, crimson wool, hyssop procedure with the shaving. Person goes back home ish, not 100%, but at least back in the vicinity, right? For 7 days. After those 7 days, person's hair is shaved off again and dips into the mikvah, and the clothes are also immersed in water. Then on the 8th day, these offerings, the animal offerings and the meal offering, is brought to effect the atonement, and after that, it's done. So a bit of a ritual, a bit of a brouhaha, not brouhaha, a bit of a to-do, as they would call it back in New York. A bit of a to-do, again, New York. So yeah, it's a lot of stuff. One thing about cutting the hair, it says in Kabbalah the following. It says an interesting thing about hair. It says hair is mosrin de mochin, which literally means the excess of the brain, excess brain. Now, I can't speak scientifically or biologically or whatever, but it says that the hair is somewhat powered by the brain, by the mind. That's what it says. Okay. So what does that mean for us? But the way it grows is it grows through the intermediary of the skull, right? Which means that it's not coming straight from the brain. There's a hard thing intervening, and this is what's poking its way out of the scalp and growing, right? So that's what hair is, which refers to the condition of tzimtzum. What is tzimtzum? Tzimtzum is the light that emerges after being screened. Well, tzimtzum itself means the screening of the light, contraction of the light, which then produces a light that's very much diminished from the original. So imagine, these canopies might be a good example. So inside the canopy, for those of you lucky to be inside the canopy, right? So there's still light, I guess, because of other light. But even theoretically, it's not like blackout screening here. It would still let some light through. So that means that there is a screen, but there's still light that's passing through that gets to the other side. But the light that's on the other side went through a bit of a block, which is the tzimtzum. Anytime you have a tzimtzum, it's dangerous. Anytime you cut the light, even if it's important that it has to happen, there's a danger of things becoming too diluted or distorted on the other side. For example, let's say a teacher has a big idea, but is teaching young students, so has to do a lot of tzimtzumim, a lot of contractions on the idea to get it accessible to the students. The danger is that you're going to dumb it down so much that either they're going to understand something that's not exactly what you originally intended, or they're going to misunderstand the idea altogether, or they're never going to get to the full idea from what you gave them, and it's going to remain this small little idea or this small parable and never really get the full notion. So there's a danger in tzimtzum. When you're cutting the light, there's a danger that you're cutting it too much, right? That's the danger with tzimtzum. So when it comes to human beings, we have the idea of tzimtzum is connected with kavura, severity, limitations, right? Boundaries, which is healthy, but it could also lead to an unhealthy state as well. And so the idea of gossip, of lashon hara, is a product of this gossip. It's a product of this tzimtzum, of this kavura. It's looking at a person, judging them unfavorably, speaking about them. It's all like it's type of a harsh modality. It's being harsh about someone else. And so part of the remedy for that is cutting off the hair, right? The hair is symbolic of that which is born of a tzimtzum, that which grows on the other side of this harshness, of this block. And for this person, what grew on the other side of that block was judgmentalism and gossip, and that's not kosher. So therefore, the hair, in this process, the hair is removed in order for the cleansing to happen. It's symbolic of getting back to the core, which is the love for the other, as opposed to the harsh judgmentalism of the other. And so, again, on a ritual level, it seems very interesting / bizarre, but on a symbolic level, because we're all into the symbols, right? On a symbolic level, it actually has a lot of significance and meaning. Yes. Go back to the roots, right? I like that. Yeah. Okay, so that's it for today for the parsha. But as you may know, we've added a new twist and an old favorite. Let me pull it up from Rabbi Jacobson's tremendous resource. How did I look it up yesterday? There is a Great Chabad app. What I'm pulling is from Chabad.org, a spiritual guide to the counting of the Omer. It comes in a wonderful flip book that I have at home, and it's got literally an insight and practical work and questions to ask oneself all 49 days. So let's go let's get into, hold on, week 3. Day 3, Tiferet of Tiferet. Today is the second day of Iyar. It's a very special day. It's the birthday of the Rebbe Marash, the 4th Chabad Rebbe, who his big teaching was Lechatchila Ariber, which means when you come to an obstacle, he used to say, when people come to an obstacle, they come to a stoppage in the road. Some people try to go around it, some people go under it, and I say, just go over it right away. Right? It's like an approach of just go big and go bold, and don't let anything get in your way. That was his motto. And so today is a day of breaking through boundaries and obstacles. So that's regarding the Hasidic birthday. Here's regarding the spiritual energy of the day. It's Tiferet within Tiferet. So it's a double Tiferet action. Tiferet is harmony or compassion. So Rabbi Jacobson writes, the work for the day is, examine the compassion of compassion. The expression of compassion and its intensity. True compassion is limitless. It is not an extension of your needs and defined by your limited perspective. Compassion for another is achieved by having a selfless attitude, rising above yourself and placing yourself in the other person's situation and experience. So here are the questions. Am I prepared and able to do that? If not, why? Do I express and actualize the compassion and empathy in my heart? What blocks me from expressing it? Am I locked in any way? Is my compassion compassionate or self-serving? Is it compassion that comes out of guilt rather than genuine empathy? How does that affect and distort my compassion? Test yourself by seeing if you express compassion even when you don't feel guilty. Does my compassion come from a sense of duty, or is it frivolous? On the other hand, is my compassion alive? Does it resound with vitality, or is it expressed only out of obligation? Is my compassion only a result of being a creature of habit who feels badly when another suffers, or do I actually apply myself to examine and refine my compassion, observing its limitations and forms of expression? How do I express compassion? Is my compassion beautiful? Is it well-rounded? Does it contain the other 6 elements of Tiferet, without which my full compassion remains unrealized? All right, so exercise for the day. Bottom line, express your compassion in a new way that goes beyond your previous limitations. Express it towards someone to whom you have been callous. All right, so that's the exercise for the day. For the recording, thank you very much for joining Daily Power Parsha and our Omer edition. It's great to see you all. Have a wonderful day. Take care.